Well, it's time we get started on this. Because of its condition, it's got big holes in it here and there and everywhere else. I'm going to call it DECAY, not for Drift King or Dirt King, because it's rotten, decomposing. So this pickup here, I've had it for a long time. I've kind of went over this already before in the previous video on this pickup, but it needed so much work and I wanted an off-road rig. I just chose this one. It's got the right running gear. It's got the corporate 14 in the rear, Dana 44 in the front, 3/4 ton. I've got some springs over here that I'm going to replace these. I'm going to do that 52, 56 spring swap. All right, the rear is 37, front is 36.5, the rear is 37. That's our starting numbers. We'll see how the front turns out, and then we have a number to go with on the rear to match everything up. And here's what I'm thinking. If I get the springs changed and get it where I need it, then I'll know exactly how to set the back up. If you got any ideas or thoughts or comments, just type them in there, and I'd be happy to hear them and get your ideas. I'm not an off-road truck builder. I've made a couple off-road rigs before. I got people around me that I've been bouncing ideas off, but I'm open to any suggestion. But I am trying to do this as a low buck build. So anyhow, let's get after this thing. To get started, I will remove, or try to remove this sway bar. That bolt is 1 1/8 inches. And then unbolt the diff and the shocks. To do this, there's several ways of doing it. There are 4 rivets in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's 2 here. So you could take those 6 out and unbolt this. 2 more rivets down here. So a total of 8 rivets, I forgot. You take those 8 rivets and you can take this whole mount off and flip it with the other side. Drill 2 more new holes for this bracket, because you're flopping these side to side. So this will be reversed. So this little bracket and this bracket will be out here. Or you can spend the money and then make a bracket that's complete, that has this new front core support mount, and then has the plate relocated with several mounting holes. I've seen several of them that are that way. So you can actually go to a 56 front spring instead of a 52, and that gives you more locations. Or if you want to just relocate your front axle, gives you options. Now you can do that, you can spend the money, you can do it how you want. Could get confusing, so I'm just gonna slip that back together. Okay, now I can knock these rivets out. This is unbolted. So I'm gonna just try to put an X, grind an X into these rivets, and then I can use my air chisel to knock them out. Don't forget earplugs. So I cut them off with this bit. Now I went to a punch. I should be able to knock all them rivets right out. And that bracket probably will just fall right to the ground.
There it is. Piece of cake. Came out really, really easy. I'm kidding. It was horrible. Still got to knock some more of these rivets out. But anyhow, I just got to do that one more time.
There, we'll just see about cleaning this up and shooting some paint on it, and we'll bolt it on there. Well, I've got the frame all cleaned up, both sides. All right, so I got these frame rails cleaned up. I just used a wire wheel on my grinder, went down both sides, polished them up, degreased them, primed and painted both frame rails, and these brackets. Did the same thing. Wire wheeled them, primed, painted. So they were ready to bolt on. I went and bought hardware. Use grade 8 bolts minimum. You can get better. Grade 8 minimum. Don't use anything less. You don't want to depend on weak bolts to hold your front suspension together. Just not a good idea. So hanging these brackets was pretty easy. The hard part was taking them off. That took me a couple hours to knock them all loose and pop all those rivets out. Aside from that, it was worth the time. So for starters, all I had to do is jack up this core support here in the middle just to get some tension off of it because it sagged some, and there's no way you're going to get these bushings back, these rubber body mounts back in. So I threw the body bushings on the bracket on here, set it into place, and put the 4 bolts in here, these 4 bolts on that main support, and snugged them up both sides. When I got that done, I moved my jack around and jacked up the bracket just to push it up tight against the frame rail and tighten those 4 bolts up. I used my air wrench, my impact, tighten those up and did both that way. That way they're solid in place. I was able to move the jack out. These 4 holes I was able to reuse right away. This hole here I was able to use. There was a hole there. It was a little oversized, but it still served the purpose of clamping this in place. So these 4 and this bolt hole I was able to reuse without any problems. This hole here, this rear lower bracket, the holes almost lined up. I couldn't get them to line up. I tried prying and everything else. They were just off about a half a hole. So I got a 3/8 drill bit, which is the size you need for these bolts. I just ran the drill through both of those holes and made them line up, forced it. And anyhow, that bolt slid right in, and I clamped that down tight, which at that point, it left me this hole here and this hole here. So I just had to drill new holes for that. Drilled that one and clamped it down tight, and then I came around to the front and drilled this one. Now these frame horns over the square body ears, I believe there are 3 frame horn styles on these pickups. This is a 73, it's the early style. So it was slightly different here in the front. I think the others would be more accepting to this, but I had to put a spacer between this front tab and the frame. I don't think it's a big deal. I wish I had a little bit bigger, wider tab to equal out that stress on that, but I think it's going to be just fine. So anyhow, I drilled a hole through there, put a spacer in there, which is a nut, and clamped that down tight. That was done. Simple project. The only cost involved in doing this was some paint and probably $20 to $25 worth of nuts and bolts for the front. I had some bolts already. We want to use grade 8. Just remember that, at least grade 8. So that's done. That's ready for springs. So my next video, I will address the front springs, the rear spring hanger, and shackles for this. And we'll talk about the cost involved in doing that part of it. But like I say, this was a low buck build. So far, to do this part of the project was about 25 bucks. Let's say 30 with paint, and if you didn't have paint laying around. I had some of that stuff already. So pretty easy job. The worst part was knocking out rivets. That was painful. That was several hours worth of cutting, knocking, and punching out rivets. But it was worth the money. I like that. I like saving money. So this is something you can do at home. There are tools that would make this job easy. You don't have to have big expensive tools. You can do this at home, borrow some tools, buy some tools. You always need a good excuse to buy tools. But anyhow, thanks for watching. We'll catch up with you guys next time, and we'll see you later. Bye.